The Caribbean was calm, until something unexpected happened. Control towers received an alert that wasn't on any flight plan, in any regional protocol, or in any prior diplomatic communication. A U.S. military aircraft, a C-130 Hercules, requested an emergency landing in Caribbean territory. There were no explanations, no time for questions. Just a phrase transmitted on a military frequency: immediate landing. Critical situation. Minutes later, Venezuelan radars registered a movement that set off all the alarms. It wasn't a civilian aircraft, nor a humanitarian transport plane. It was a key piece of the U.S. Air Force descending without apparent authorization in an area where every kilometer of airspace is politically charged. Alarms sounded in Caracas. The government demanded answers. The United States remained silent. And as the Hercules approached the nearest airport, thousands asked themselves the same question. What could compel a military aircraft of this caliber to land in the Caribbean, so close to Venezuela, without prior notice? From that moment on, nothing was ever routine again. What seemed like a simple technical emergency transformed into an episode fraught with suspicion, speculation, and fear. Because when a military plane crosses borders unannounced, it's almost never an accident. Before starting this video, remember to subscribe and like it. It all began when the control tower heard the phrase no operator wants to hear: emergency landing, descending now. The voice came from a U.S. Air Force C-130 Hercules, a tactical transport aircraft that never flies without a strategic purpose. The nearest available runway was at a Caribbean airport, but the aircraft was heading there without diplomatic authorization, without a registered flight plan, and with an urgency that defied all protocol. What was unsettling wasn't just the unexpected arrival of the C-130, but its location. It was dangerously close to Venezuela's air surveillance zone. Every passing second increased the unease. A foreign military giant landing in a politically sensitive area is not a coincidence. It's a trigger. The control tower tried to get details, but the transmission cut off with a military coldness that left everyone without answers. Only 3 isolated words were heard: failure, code, critical. No one knew if the failure was mechanical, electronic, or tactical. The only certainty was that the Hercules wasn't following the emergency procedures that all crews in the region are trained to follow. Its trajectory was too precise, too direct, too calculated. As if it knew exactly where it had to go. As if the airport had been its destination from the start. As it descended, movements began to be detected that further heightened the tension. Unidentified helicopters appeared on radar in the area. Ground patrols near the airport began reporting the presence of armed personnel who did not belong to local authorities. No technical emergency justifies that kind of silent escort. And if it was a relief or training mission, there would have been formal notification. The confusion turned to concern when the runway was closed to all civilian traffic without explanation, and the terminal was ordered to evacuate non-essential personnel. An emergency landing rarely paralyzes an entire airport. This was something else entirely. The Hercules finally touched down with a rough maneuver that kicked up dust and cracked part of the runway surface. But as soon as it came to a stop, something even stranger happened. The crew didn't disembark. No pilot, no engineer, no officer opened the cargo door. The minutes ticked by in almost theatrical silence. Foreign military vehicles approached without waiting for authorization from local authorities. And when one of the side doors finally opened, no passengers disembarked, but rather equipment. Sealed boxes, unmarked containers, and heat-shielded devices were transferred from inside the aircraft to waiting cargo trucks, as if this operation had been planned long in advance. Tensions exploded when reports surfaced of U.S. personnel on the ground, acting independently. There was no communication with local authorities, no requests for medical assistance, and no indication that the landing had been forced by an actual accident. Airport security units observed some crew members taking electronic and signal measurements around the perimeter, as if they were tracking something or someone hidden in the area. An emergency landing doesn't require tracking equipment, armored containers, or secret field operations. By then, no one believed the C-130 had come down on that runway by chance. While this was happening, Venezuela raised its airspace alert level. Military radars and reconnaissance aircraft began monitoring the surrounding airspace. The question that quickly gripped the entire region arose: if the United States was conducting a secret operation so close to Venezuelan territory, why? What were they looking for? What were they transporting? And why was the maneuver disguised as an emergency? Interpretations soon divided analysts and governments. Some claimed the Hercules was carrying intelligence equipment destined for a clandestine facility. Others maintained it was transporting a group of specialized operatives who were to enter covertly. A more alarming hypothesis also circulated, that it was carrying something that had begun to malfunction on board, something too delicate or dangerous to continue flying, forcing a landing as the only way to avoid an international incident. Subsequent events only fueled the uncertainty. The unloaded cargo was escorted out of the airport within minutes and taken to a port area with heightened security. Local technicians reported that the container identification codes had been deliberately covered. And while all this was happening, the crew remained inside the aircraft for almost an hour before disembarking to perform what was interpreted as quick repairs. However, these repairs didn't correspond to an actual failure. They didn't replace any visible parts, they didn't request local technical assistance, and they didn't activate any auxiliary systems. It seemed they simply needed time until the ground operation was completed. When the Hercules restarted its engines, airport authorities demanded a formal explanation before allowing it to take off. The American crew responded with a diplomatic code that neutralizes any operational questions, classified Category 3. In other words, no explanation. The aircraft took off without responding to further transmissions and left the airspace as quickly as it had arrived. The airport resumed operations hours later, but the episode left a void impossible to ignore. The United States had landed a military aircraft in the region without prior permission, had carried out an unidentified operation, and had withdrawn without providing any explanation. The shockwaves reached Venezuela not because of the landing itself, but because of what it symbolized. A C-130 Hercules doesn't enter a geopolitically sensitive area to ask for help. It enters with a purpose. An emergency landing without damage, with the unloading of armored personnel, armed staff on the ground, and an immediate takeoff afterward doesn't follow the logic of aviation. It follows the logic of military intelligence. The government demanded answers. The United States remained silent. And every day that passes without clarification strengthens the idea that what happened wasn't an accident, but an operation covered up by a fabricated narrative. The region was marked by a new precedent. It wasn't a missile, a submarine, or an aircraft carrier that raised tensions, but a simple landing. Because, in the modern military world, noisy events aren't what herald danger. The real risk appears disguised as routine, in maneuvers that no one can stop because no one knows how to interpret them in time. That's why what's most unsettling isn't what the C-130 brought, unloaded or tracked, but the possibility that it did so without any of the countries involved being able to prevent it. And now everyone is asking the same question. If something like this happened once, what's to stop it from happening again? Perhaps one day classified documents will reveal the truth behind that unexpected landing. Perhaps official reports, technical statements, or diplomatic explanations will surface, attempting to justify what happened. But the fact remains that, for now, all we have is a sequence of events that doesn't fit with a simple mechanical failure. A C-130 Hercules doesn't interrupt a military route without prior notice. It doesn't unload armored vehicles at a foreign airport. It doesn't operate with armed personnel without local coordination. It doesn't take off again without leaving a trace, unless what it's transporting and what it's carrying out has a strategic value that transcends any protocol. The Caribbean was forever changed by that day. Venezuela understood that, even without gunfire or clashes, its airspace can be affected by decisions made far beyond its borders. The United States demonstrated that, when it has a goal, diplomacy can become a secondary matter. And the entire region understood that, in this new silent war, strategic maneuvers don't always sound like explosions. Sometimes they sound like a plane landing without permission and taking off without explanation. Because the message wasn't verbal, but it was clear: true power doesn't ask for entry. It simply arrives. And when it leaves behind questions that no one dares to answer. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you in the next video.